Oh, sure. And titles for books can be very long, right? For film, they're short, right? Like if you can make it one word, that's great. So, right? Or two or three. But the thing is, you want to keep it short, very concise. So if you go on IMDb and you have a title that you're working on for your book, you type it in the search bar. And if there's a movie that comes up with that title, I would suggest pick a different title and find a title. Yeah, because if you want the movie to have the same title, you need to reserve that title. So if you do come up with a title that when you search for it, it's no longer it's not being used, you want to create your IMDb account and you want to request that title, and you can reserve that title and just put that your project is in development. Okay, because the development stage is where you're working on the script. And so even if you're just working on the book and you're not working on the script yet, if you reserve your title, then you know you will have that title available when you're ready to start working on your screenplay.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have everyone back. We have a guest today who is somewhere very, very warm right now. Originally from my part of the world, but now somewhere completely different. Jaclyn's with me today. We're going to be talking about an amazing thing about maybe if you have a great book and you're saying, Dave, I would love to see my book become a movie, and I have zero idea how this happens. Well, you're in luck. I have the expert here. Jaclyn's going to help you unpack all that and understand that. Jaclyn, welcome to the podcast. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is exciting. So tell everybody where you are, where it's
I
warm.
was originally from, like, I grew up in a small town on the West Coast on Vancouver Island. And then I lived in the Vancouver area for most of my adult years. And now I'm in Mexico and it's hot.
Oh, man. That's a big difference. That's a really big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Actually, I'd never even been to Mexico when my husband and I decided, let's move there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's one of the first things you had to adjust to besides the heat?
Well, I did speak a good amount of Spanish. I'd say probably 60% fluent before we came,
Okay.
but still, like that was a lot to adjust to. Just it was all the time. Like it's one thing when, I know a good amount of Spanish and I can go talk to someone, and have a conversation here and there. But now it's like that's the only language I get to use. And so after the third month, my brain was kind of exhausted. And yeah, it took a while to kind of get over that hump to just accept the fact that I speak Spanish every day now. It's just the way.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot because I have Spanish listeners that are listening today, and they will not expect this. But did you want to just say hello to our Spanish listeners? Because this will blow them away to have you
Okay,
say this and greet them as well.
sí, por seguro, cómo no. Me llamo Jaclyn. Bienvenidos. Quiero explicar muchas cosas hoy. Gracias.
See, there you go. Now everyone is like, wait, rewind. What was that? What did you just? That's awesome. That's amazing. I love having people come on that can just do that. That makes me very, very happy. Okay, so tell us a little bit. I have your website up as we're chatting. Talk a little bit about your website. Let's start there because it's a
Okay.
great starting point. But tell everybody what you do.
Okay, so Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy is a program that my husband and I actually recently launched. And the whole purpose is to help screenwriters, well, people who want to be screenwriters and people who already are, to advance in the whole process, wherever they're at. So some of our students had never seen a script before they came to us. And some of the people that have already gone through some of our programs are professional writers. So we have something for everyone, literally. Like we have teens. Our youngest student right now is 14 and he is totally crushing it. He's in the adult class and he is like amazing. So
Wow.
yeah, I always think screenwriting's for everyone. If you have an imagination, if you love dialogue and you're willing to stretch yourself, it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. 14.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I don't even remember what I did at 14, but it wasn't writing a screenwriting thing, of course. Wow, that's amazing. So I get a lot of people coming through, Jaclyn, and they write some amazing books. and they're like,
Mhm.
I can see the movie as I'm writing, or my characters, like, they come out of the book and they talk to me as I'm
Mhm.
writing, and I can just see this. And my dream would be to see this on a big screen someday and see my book come to life. Is this kind of what you guys do? Do you help authors kind of bring their dreams to life?
Yes, actually, I'm in the process of putting together an entire program for that. It's
Okay.
going to be starting in September. It's a 10-month program that takes an author, like somebody who's already a published author. It's only for authors for this particular program. So we're going to be taking them through the process of how to develop their story that's in the book, to develop in a way that's going to fit the screen, because it doesn't always translate. And so you have to figure out how to make that translate. And so let me just back up for a second. Have you ever read a book and then you've gone to the theater and watched the
Mm.
movie and you're like, what? What was
Yeah,
that?
that was
You
not the
know?
book at all. They missed, oh,
Okay,
missed
right?
this, they missed this. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And not even just missing it, like sometimes just missing the point,
yeah.
like not just a few storylines or characters, but it's like, I don't even know what that story was about anymore.
Right.
So the thing is that there is actually a reason why stuff gets taken out. And it's very logical if you think about it. How long would it take to actually read your book? So if you were to actually get your book made into an audiobook, 10,000 words equals about 1 hour of finished audiobook time.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have 10,000 words in your book, then okay, that's 1 hour. But if you have 80,000, that's going to be like 8 hours. How
Yeah.
are you supposed to fit that story into a 1.5 to 2 hour screenplay,
Hmm.
right? To be able to
Right.
watch the movie. So it's one of the things is literally you have to narrow down the story in order for it to fit for the time frame that you're working with. The other thing is every character that you add in a screenplay adds to the budget. And so a lot of times you'll find that characters from the books will be combined.
Right.
Or, maybe instead of the character having four siblings, they'll have one. Like it has to be brought down. It would just be so expensive if you have too many characters.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. And then obviously, if you are going to be having to narrow your story down, that means you're going to be pulling out different storylines. That's just the logic of how it works. Like you can't get around it.
So mathematically, it makes sense. That totally makes sense that you can't have an 8 hour movie. That would be like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So is there anything for maybe a new author that's in the process of writing with the end goal that they would like a movie possibly in the future? Before I start my journey of writing my book, is there anything they should kind of keep in mind as they build out their book with maybe the end goal of a movie?
Sure, yeah, for sure. There's actually one really, really important factor that is the difference between books and movies,
Okay.
which is in books, you can actually get inside someone's head. You can also reference something that this happens because of that, or, you can say those kinds of things in a book. In a movie, you can't. Everything needs to be presented either visually or audibly. That's it. You cannot just know something.
Right.
You have to see it. It's all objective. So as you're writing your book, if you're thinking, can I show this? Right? Like, because one of the things that I would ask an author, because I do get asked quite often, like, how can I turn my book into a movie? Um, I have to let them know, like, is your book able to be shown on a screen where all you could do is watch it and listen to it? And can you understand the story that way? Or is it one where you actually are inside someone's head or multiple people's heads, where how are you supposed to know stuff unless you read it? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I know in like books, like they have show don't tell,
Yeah.
as but in screenwriting it's like that on steroids.
Yeah.
You really have to show it. You can't tell it. It's poor writing if you tell it, and an author would understand that.
Amazing. So to work with you guys, do we have to have a book to come and work with you, or is there different ways that people are coming to be a part of Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy?
Okay, well, we do have that one program that I
Okay.
was mentioning. That one is specifically for published authors, but
Okay.
we have other programs as well. We have a screenwriting foundations class, which is it's a 7-week kind of crash course, but it's going to take you through the process of developing your story into an idea and a framework that will work for screen. So you'll have your whole story plotted out and you'll get started on writing it, and that all happens in 7 weeks. So that's why I say it's a bit of a crash course. It can be quite intense at times. But it's perfect for people that have maybe they've just been wondering, is this something I'm interested in? Because it's not a huge commitment. It's 7 weeks. So people that just want to dip their toe, totally works. Or if they want to get started and they just need someone to send them off on the right track, perfect for that. Or actually, I have a screenwriter in the class who he's actually written a few scripts before, but he didn't understand why it didn't seem to be getting any traction in any competitions or whatever. And so he was like, well, I guess I want to take the foundations, see where I'm missing something. And then he realized within the first class, he knows what he needs to work on already. So yeah, it's perfect to make sure that you have the foundations. That's why it's called foundations.
Nice. And this
Yeah.
is available globally then? Like we can do this online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all the classes are live online Zoom classes, and we record them and have them available for the students during the whole course. And then for a few weeks afterward for anybody that missed a class and needs to catch up. We have actually on our website, we have groups so that you can be part of the group, whatever class that you're in. So you can ask questions there. You can like even a log line. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a 1 to 2 sentence enticing phrase to be able to explain what your movie is about without giving away the ending. And you want to entice people to want to read your story, right?
Right.
And so people can post their log lines and get feedback on it so that, it kind of is a group effort, everybody working together, giving each other feedback on their ideas and maybe try this and maybe try that. And which is very helpful to be able to, get ahead. And that's one of the things actually that we really wanted to do with Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy is to bring people together so that we can grow faster together. Because it seems to be it's an industry where there's a lot of introverts, for one, screenwriting.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of spread out. And so there seems to be a bit of a mystery in some regards to how do you go about doing this? How do you break into the industry? Let's say I know how to write a screenplay. Well, what do I do with that knowledge? What do I do with that ability? How do I break in, right? So that's what we want to do is provide the entire process, not just the learning and educational part of it, but we're going to be establishing a pitch festival so that when writers have their solid script and they're ready, they go through the pitch ready program and then they get to go to the festival. And then that way we have like a spirit of excellence in everything that we do. We always want to bring our best.
Nice. Okay, now let's narrow in on the name of your business. Tell me how important the family friendly part of this is in the big scope of what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, the family friendly is not just that we want to teach people how to write family friendly films. We want the entire process to be family friendly. Okay. So as a screenwriter myself, I've taken a lot of courses and classes from, other writers and programs and whatever. And I'm always assigned to watch something that is outside of my own belief or, like just my own standards that I have for myself, like stuff I would never watch. And why do I have to watch the stuff I would never watch so that I can write the stuff that I would watch? And to me, it just didn't make sense. Like there's got to be movies out there that are great that are not going to be something that you have to like watch behind closed doors with the clicker in your hand, ready to skip certain scenes, right? So yeah, we've designed this entire program and also to include the faith-based audience, because that is an ever-growing part of the industry, right? Like that entire genre is just like, it is busting wide open right now. And so we've created a safe place for people that just love to write, they want to learn, and they want to do it from a family friendly perspective. So you could have your child in the room while you're taking the classes, while you're doing your homework. You can even actually, like, it's family movies most of the time that are assigned. And so you could even watch it with your family in the room. So you're doing your homework and you're not missing family time.
Amazing. Okay, so any success stories that you can share with us? Any people that have kind of been working with you and something great has happened as they've kind of worked through the process?
Well, we launched in January, so we are still new.
You're still new, yeah.
Yeah. However, we have been getting a lot of feedback from the writers saying that they have learned a lot. And one of the programs that we do is actually called a peer review festival, where screenwriters, once they have at least their first draft done, whichever draft they're on, they can submit it to the festival, and they do it with the agreement that they're going to read and review 3 other screenplays. And then they get 3 back from other people. And so everybody ends up with 3 different feedback forms that they've received about their screenplay. And then that will help them to go into a rewrite. And so normally, in order to get feedback on your script, it's going to cost like $150 to get that from a professional, just for one. But with our peer review festival, it's like $50 and you get 3. Wow. And it's going to be from someone in your peer category, because we have beginners, intermediate, and professional. So, the professionals aren't going to be getting peer reviewed by the beginners, right?
Right.
So what was amazing, even for myself, because I put my own script in the professional category, and I was so thankful, because this particular script I put in there, I knew something wasn't working and I could not figure out where. And this guy gave me feedback, and he explained, like, oh yeah, in act 1, you need to set this up better. And then that'll make everything happen in act 3 make way more sense. And I was just like, oh yes, obviously it's all in act 1. I missed it all. So then I was able to go back and do a rewrite, and I fixed it all. And that's the kind of feedback we're getting from the other writers as well, is that the feedback they got was so valuable, and they were able to rewrite going in with way more knowledge.
Awesome. And this is beyond movies as well. It also encompasses like television. Is that right?
Yes. At the moment, we don't have classes for television. However, the Screenwriting Foundations class, it's actually the same structure to write a movie as it is to write a pilot. So I do have some of my students writing pilots in that particular class. So if that is something that you're interested in, this Screenwriting Foundations class covers both.
Okay. Amazing. So back to our author audience then, from your perspective, with your expertise, any kind of guidance for someone that is finished, their book is out in the world, they're promoting it, and maybe they haven't really considered the idea of pursuing it as a movie or a television show, however that's going to translate. Any kinds of words of wisdom for somebody in that situation? How can they benefit from getting their book onto the screen?
Absolutely. There's actually 2 really interesting things that they may not realize. If they have a large following with their book, getting it made into a movie is easier than me just presenting a spec script to a producer. The reason is they already have an audience. So if you have a built-in audience and your intellectual property is already proven that you have the audience,
right,
that actually really helps the process. So then the other thing that they need to keep in mind is credit. Okay, if you take that and you go pitch your book to a producer saying, look, I have all of these readers, I've sold all these books, I've got this huge following, they love any updates of whatever I'm doing. And okay, here's what's going to happen. They're going to say, either they'll say, oh, it's not for me. But let's say they decide that they want to do it. They're going to say, okay, great, I'll put a writer on it. And so then you're out of the picture. You get to have your story by credit, but somebody else is going to take the screenplay by credit, and that splits 50-50. Okay. And depending on how much has changed in the story in order to make it work for screen, that screenwriter might also end up taking part of the story by credit because they've had to rework some things. So and you totally can do this because, let's say even if the worst that you could get is 25%, let's say 25%, it's better than zero, right? If you really want to break into the movies, I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is understand what you would be getting into.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it would be quite a shock to realize, like, wait a minute, my credit is cut down like 75%. What?
Right.
Just know that going in that it could go to that degree.
Yeah. Like I wrote the book, like.
Exactly. All that work that you put in, all that grueling hours of trying to figure out, like what's the character arc and all of that, right? All of that work. But here's what you could do instead. If you learned how to write the screenplay yourself, which is not as complicated as it might appear initially, but if you wrote it yourself, then you would maintain that credit. Okay. And depending on what type of budget that your screenplay would end up requiring, like, and also the amount of money that an investor would be willing to put into it, knowing what they could get back from it. If it's going to be like a really, really big, amazing thing, like The Princess Bride.
Yay, I love it.
Me too. Like that's huge, right? Okay. So for that movie, you would be able, even if you only had 25% credit, you'd still make a decent amount of money on it, right? Chances are. But what if you actually maintained all of the credit? Then that's amazing. And which is actually what happened in The Princess Bride. The writer who wrote the book, he also wrote the screenplay. And I think, because I've read both, I think that the fact that it was the same writer actually made a difference, because the essence of the story, it feels the same. It really does feel the same. And so he was able to portray the story both in the book and on the screen where you would not be dissatisfied. Like it plays out exactly how you would imagine it.
Nice.
So yeah. And so I do think that for writers who write their own screenplay, maintaining that creative control, because that's the other thing I didn't get into. If you hire another screenwriter, you lose your creative control because it's no longer your project, it's theirs.
Right. Yeah.
So if you maintain the creative control, then you're able to keep that essence of the story so that you can choose which characters are going to get combined, which storylines are going to get cut out. Because if you're thinking, okay, the core story is this, then you can make it work so that you stay with that core story. And then that way the audience, they might be able to recognize, like, oh, they didn't get into that. Well, I guess they didn't have time. It won't be as disappointing as where they'd be like, I don't recognize the movie. It's so different from it, right? Keeping that essence will allow them to feel that connection, knowing, they portrayed it as, as much as you possibly can, if you have to cut it down, especially if it's a lot. But yeah, like the Hunger Games, it's the same thing. Like people have said that the books and the movies, and same with Harry Potter, right? Like the books and the movies, they work. You're not going to go to the movie and be like, well, that's not what the book said.
Yeah.
Like there might be a few details here and there that are going to play out differently, but the essence is there.
And I guess as an author too, they might even change, like the title of the movie wouldn't even reflect the title of the book.
That happens.
Yeah. So you see based on a book by or inspired by a book from, see that in the credits, right? And you're like, oh, okay, so it's not like the book as a movie, but it inspired the movie or something.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, that's why if you do have a large following, that would probably help to maintain the title also.
Okay. So if you do want your book to become a movie in the future, and that's your goal, build up your audience, do whatever you can to kind of have that support group and the cheerleaders in your corner as you're doing this, right? So that you can show down the road, that you do have an active community around you, and leverage that community
Hmm.
and take your community on the journey of, once maybe are greenlit to have your book turned into a movie, then take your audience through the journey of this thing coming to life, and bring them along, because when that movie comes out, they'll be there waiting to support you and do
Oh
that.
yeah,
It's gonna be
and
amazing.
all your super fans are going to go out there and tell all their friends like, "Oh, I read the book. It's amazing." And maybe their friends aren't the kind of people that like to read books, but they'll be like, "Well, if it's a good story, if you say so, sure, I'll see the movie."
Yeah.
That's what you need.
So I know in the author world, we can do our whole self-publishing thing, and you don't have to go through the traditional methods of getting your book into the world. We can do it ourselves. Is there a do-it-yourself type approach in getting a movie done? Because I know there's costs, like
Yeah,
crazy
yeah,
costs, but
that's a really, really good point. Okay, one of the differences with books and film is that with a book, it can be a very independent, kind of process. You can do the whole thing yourself. Film is very much a group effort. Like if you think about how many people are on set, even if there's only two people in the scene, there are so many people
right.
on set just to film it, okay? It's not just your director and the actors. You've got people who are working sound, people working lighting, people who are, catering, because they always feed actors and crew on
Yeah.
set, right? And so you've got all of these people for every single scene, which is why it's expensive, right?
Yeah.
But it is very much a group effort. So in order to have it made, unless you also are a production
Yeah.
team, like if
Right.
you are a producer and you can pull together this team, it's really not something you can do alone, is the
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
You can't just grab a camera and have some actors come in and just be like, hey,
Yeah.
it's not going to work out well for you and it won't get distributed. Because
Yeah.
that's the other part of it too. It's not just being able to make the movie. You have to get it out there for people to see it, which means you have to get it past distribution. You can't
Yes.
self-publish it. I mean, I guess you could put it on YouTube. That could be self-publishing.
Yeah.
But not as many people are going to find it as if you have it distributed on different streaming platforms.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good that you open the door to there. What do you have any thoughts around going with the big theaters with the popcorn and the sticky floors compared to going through like a streaming service like a Netflix or a
Mhm.
Prime or whatever?
Right.
Is there an easier path for an author or a screenwriter to get their
Okay.
first movie out?
So it's going to come down to a couple things.
Okay.
One of them is budget.
Yeah.
And so within that part of it is how many known actors can you have? If you can have at least one known actor that can draw the audience that doesn't already know you and your story and, doesn't already want to watch it regardless of who's in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you have to expand that audience, right? And so if you have enough of a budget where you know that you're going to pack the theaters, if you know you have that, you can go for the theatrical release and you can make your money back. However, most people, especially when they're starting out, work with independent production teams and they might be able to get one known face, but like that known face might be somebody from a made for television movie or, like a TV star or something like that, where they're lesser known, but they're not completely unknown. Like the one where it's like, I don't know their name, but I've seen their face before.
Yeah.
If you can get them in there, then that's actually really, really good because they don't cost as much, but they will help you in the process of distribution. Because when you take it to the streaming platforms, they'll be like, oh, that's a recognizable face. Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Okay.
And if you release on streaming platforms, then you actually are going to be put in front of so many households. And people can typically make their money back faster with a streaming platform than having to put all the money out for the theaters. If it's not that kind of, hyped up movie that's going to be able to make its money back at the box office.
Okay. And one other thing too, a lot of talk going on in podcasting right now about podcasters setting up their IMDb page,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have guests come on your podcast that are, I've had movie stars on this show, and then connecting my podcast to their IMDb
Right.
and as a place where they've been featured, right? Any thought
Mhm.
around creating that early days as an author or a screenwriter to have an IMDb page set up?
Um, yeah, like I would say as soon as film is something that you're moving toward,
Okay.
create it.
Okay.
If you're only in the book atmosphere right now, like then you don't necessarily need it. But as soon as you're starting to move in that direction, then get set up on IMDb.
Yeah.
And here's another thing to keep in mind. And so you may want an IMDb for this. If you want to have your book eventually, like the one you're working on, you want to be able to have it made into a movie. Titles, okay? For movies, you have to make sure that you reserve a title.
Oh,
Yeah, you
okay.
cannot have the same title as another movie.
No. Okay. Yeah. Because I
So
see
if
in books, books do sometimes.
oh
You see the
sure,
same
and
title multiple times, right?
titles for books can be very long,
Yeah.
right? For film, they're short,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like if you can make it one word, that's great.
Titanic.
So,
Done. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or two or three. But the thing is, you want to keep it short, very concise. So if you go on IMDb and you have a title that you're working on for your book, you type it in the search bar. And if there's a movie that comes up with that title, I would suggest pick a different title and
So,
find a title.
wow.
Yeah, because if you want the movie to have the same title, you need to reserve that title. So if you do come up with a title that when you search for it, it's no longer it's not being used. You want to create your IMDb account and you want to request that title and you can reserve that title and just put that your project is in development. Okay? Because the
Wow.
development stage is where you're working on the script. And so even if you're just working on the book and you're not working on the script yet, if you reserve your title, then you know you will have that title available when you're ready to start working on your screenplay.
It's like buying a domain at
Yes.
www.com. Get
Mm-hmm.
that now. If you're thinking about it, just go get it, buy it.
Right, right.
You own it instead of finding out after you're all done your book and you're ready to go to the next step. And you're like, oh, that name's taken. You're like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
no. Right. So,
yeah.
wow, that's a great point. That was really good, Jaclyn. I love that. So that IMDb page is something you definitely need to put some thought into then, if that's
Mhm.
where you're headed, right?
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to film, especially for titles, yeah, you definitely need to reserve them
Sweet.
because maybe it's not being used today, but who knows if maybe a year from now or even 6 months from now, it could get snatched up and then it's no longer there. So if it's there, you want to grab it. And for just also for the IMDb account, now in order to reserve something, you have to have a pro account, but
Yep.
you can actually pay monthly for that, which means you can pay for your 1 month, reserve whatever titles or whatever that you need to do, and then you can stop payment. Your account will just be there. Pardon me. Your account will be there kind of just in stasis. And then you can come back and start it up again when you're ready to actually
Okay.
start working in the pro industry and start adding names and all that kind of stuff to your project.
Nice.
Yeah.
See? Wow. See, okay. That was really good. I'm glad we didn't even have that in my notes to go there, but that was great.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. So there's a new workshop coming up, to take your book towards making it into a movie. Can you talk a little bit? We don't have the date right at the moment, but can you talk a little bit about what this workshop's going to be for the participants?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go through the whole process. I know I've kind of touched on certain points today, but I'm going to go through the whole process of having a book made into a movie and what the different options are, and then the things that you need to know with each of those options. Because that's going to help you to make the decision that you're going to be happy with in the end. Because if you go into something thinking like, okay, if my choice is to write it or to let someone else write it, well, I kind of have another book I want to work on. I don't know if I want to learn a whole new skill just so I can write this movie. Maybe I'll just let someone else do it. And maybe that's fine. But while you're getting into it, you realize that actually it's not playing out how you had thought, like there are things you need to know going into that. Or on the other hand, if you're thinking like, well, what do I do if I've written the screenplay? Then how do I actually, get it sold? And how do I know that I'm going to write it well? Like what? So all of these things that each side, there's so much to be able to that you need to understand in order to make a great decision that you're going to be happy with and not regret. So that's where I'm going with that class, is just laying it all out there. And then, of course, if you want to go the route of just pitching directly to a producer and getting a different writer or whatever, like that's, you're happy to go do that. But if it happens to be that you want to learn to write it and you want to take our classes, then I'll also explain a little bit of what we cover during the 10 months and see if maybe that'll be a great fit for you.
Amazing. So at the end of the 10 months, what am I walking away with after spending time with 10 months with you guys?
You will actually have the third draft of your screenplay.
Wow.
Okay, because the first draft is something that you definitely want to celebrate and be excited about, but you need to rewrite it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've written a novel, obviously your first draft is something where you're like, oh, I did it. Okay, now I need to redo it.
Yeah, do it again.
So we'll get you to the point where you're actually finished your third draft. And included in the program is a professional coverage service. So at the end, you're able to submit it to a professional services where they will give you what's called coverage, which means that they'll give you feedback on different elements of your script and give you a score. The score is 1 to 10, and anything that is a 9 or above is basically ready to go to film. And if you get that back and it's a 6, you still have at least another 1 to 2 drafts to write before it's ready to pitch to a producer, but you're in control of the process. And so if you get it back and you're at an 8, you're like, oh, I'm so close. And probably the notes that are in there, the feedback that you've got is probably what you need to bump you up to the 9. So it's incredibly useful feedback. And that particular coverage, when you go to pitch to a producer, you can show them that coverage so that they can see it's an industry standard rating, so that they can see for themselves. Like an 8 is actually something where it's like, okay, strongly consider this. Like this is worth looking at.
Yeah.
It has all the things that it needs to have in order to be a successful film. Take a look at it. Nice. So being able to take that to a producer is going to help the whole process of getting, it's called optioned, which let me just briefly explain how things work for making a sale with a screenplay. So first, a producer will option your screenplay, which means that they will purchase the rights to produce your screenplay, which means you've taken it off the table for anyone else. So any other offers that come your way, you can't take them, because this producer has paid you a certain amount of money in order to have the option to produce. And so you have a contract that's going to be a limited amount of time. So maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 2 years. I think typically it's about 2 years because it takes time to get things rolling. They have to gather all the team, the finances, everything like that in order to produce it. And so it's probably going to be a 2-year contract, and you get paid money in order to take it off the market for 2 years. If at the end of 2 years, they have not gone into production and they're not within a very, let's say a month or 2 of going into production, then you get your rights back and you can option it to somebody else, or you can renew the contract and get paid out again for another option contract.
Okay.
And so then when you actually have it bought from you, it's when it goes into production. So the day that they start filming, you're going to get paid out whatever was in your contract for the purchase price.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Similar to buying a house. When you put an offer in on a house and it's off the market now and whatever and all that kind of process. It makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So on top of the course that's coming up in a few months, there's also you had an offer for some questions that an author can use to determine if their book is going to be movie ready or movie worthy. And that's something that they can reach out to you and get those kind of guideline questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If you go to our website and it doesn't even matter which page you're on. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a sign up for our newsletter form. Yeah. And we only send out like 1 or 2 a month. Like we're not going to get all spammy or anything. But if you sign up for our newsletter, then when we announce our date for the for this workshop, then we'll be able to send you that information. But you can also contact us directly through the contact form and ask for, just say, I'm an author and I want to know if I can make my book into a movie. And then we can send you that email that has the 3 questions that you need to strongly consider in order to know if it would work. Because not all books, like not all stories that are in books that work really well in books, work well on a movie screen. Right?
Okay.
They don't always translate. So you need to be able to consider these 3 things to know if yours will translate.
Good. Is there any way to kind of sit down and kind of have this kind of conversation with you or somebody on your team in the early days while we're still kind of determining whether or not this is the way we should go? Is there a way to kind of have this conversation with you?
Sure, yeah. Well, if you have gone through those 3 questions and you're thinking like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this, I still have some questions, then you can contact me and we can do maybe like a 15-minute to half hour kind of conversation, just to kind of go through your specific story and see, like, can that work, and is it a good idea, and is it something, even because here's the other thing, is it something that film audiences are looking for?
Right.
Because right now it's starting to kind of get back to normal, but after the pandemic, nobody wanted anything that was like a psychological thriller or anything dark. Nobody could get distribution on anything that was like that. It was just too heavy, and people needed something lighthearted to watch.
Yeah.
Right. And so stuff like that, where I can be like, okay, so according to the industry and where things are going, trends and whatever, what's selling, this particular story that fits in this category, which is selling, or this particular story fits in this category, which at the moment isn't selling, but who knows if maybe in 5 years it would. So then it would at least kind of give you an understanding of like how much urgency you want to put into the project.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. So, and I see on your website, there's lots of resources at the bottom here for people to click through and check out. So a very healthy website for any author that's interested and wants to go through this. You've given us so much information, which is amazing. I think we've already answered a lot of the questions that somebody might already have for you just by doing this today. And that's spectacular. But is there anything that we haven't touched on that we would be missing if we closed off right now? And you're like, we didn't really talk about this part, and I think it's really important for authors. Is there anything that we didn't touch on?
A minute ago, we were talking about contracts and selling stuff. And so I just wanted to, maybe one last thing to say is, how much does a screenwriter make? Okay, so it's going to be based on the budget of the film. So a screenwriter is going to make somewhere between 1% to 3% of the budgets of the film's budget. Okay, so if the budget is $1 million, then the screenwriter or screenwriters, however many people are involved in that, are going to get 1% to 3%. And that's going to depend on whatever you negotiate in your contract.
Okay. That's a good to have an idea of that. That's a number that most people are going to be concerned about for sure. That's great. It's Jaclyn, so great to have you on here. And I love the idea that you're focusing on family friendly. That is something we need more of right now. And I think we talked in our pre-chat that, there's those movies where you're like, I don't want my kids to walk into this moment because it's not a good spot in the movie. And, or looking over the shoulder of your children to make sure it's appropriate for them when you can't be in the room with them when they're watching. It's kind of nice to know that there's a group like yours that are creating family friendly content for all of us to enjoy without having to worry. So I really love the heart of what you're doing, and it's something to be proud of. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a dream for me. I'm living my dream for
It's
real.
amazing. Despite the temperature, you're living the dream.
I am. No, this is part of my dream. Isn't it every writer's dream to move to Mexico and just be a writer?
Of course. Right? Yeah.
Living my dream just without air conditioning at the moment.
See, that definitely needs to be in the budget. And I know it's coming soon for you guys. Can't wait for you to have that. Again, the website, familyfriendlyscreenwriting.com is the website. We'll have all the links in the show notes as well. And where are you guys on social media? Where you're most active?
Facebook.
Facebook. Okay. So we'll have links for that as well in the show notes. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And I hope we can send many authors to you. I can think of many that have come on the show and their stories are amazing, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, and they're just amazing people. And I'd love to see them spend some time with you guys and take their writings to the next level. So hoping this opens many doors for you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Awesome. So yes, everyone, all the links are in the show notes. Please go and check that out and reach out. And again, sign up for the newsletter. Hey, that's easy. You can go do that today. Head over to the website and do that right away. Thanks, Jaclyn, for being part of the podcast.
Thank you.
Awesome. Really appreciate you being here and being part of our podcast community. LivingTheNextChapter.com is our website. I have an offer for you as an author, if you're listening, and you're wanting to build your website for your book. I've had so many authors come on and they're struggling in this area. I'd love to help you. All of the websites that I built for my different podcasts, I have experience and I'd love to help you and get you up and running. I can help you with your domain purchase. I can help you with setting up your podcast, making it really simple. And if you love Canva, we can even set it up on Canva for you and you can do all your own maintenance. You don't need to hire anybody. We'll help you get set up. So if that interests you as an author and you want a website for your book, let me know. We can do this. I can help you. LivingTheNextChapter.com is the website for the podcast. You can find me there. I'd love to help you. Reach out. Let me know if I can be of assistance in any way. And thank you again for listening to Living the Next Chapter. Today is where your book begins. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.